General and State Affairs. It is 9 o'clock, 9:01 in fact. We need to go forward. Folks, first part of our agenda is bill introductions. Do we have bill introductions from committee? Seeing no bill introductions from committee, is there bill introductions from the audience? Seeing none from the audience, bill introductions are closed. Committee, if you would look on your computers and pull up House Concurrent Resolution 5003. I'll give you just a minute to get that up. While they're doing that, oh yes, Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Osier.
May I go run and get my computer? In my haste to leave the calendar meeting, I didn't bring it.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, while we're doing that, she's getting her computer, I'm going to look to Matt Sterling, our reviser. Matt, you're on, correct? Committee, you know how I am about starting on time. We're going to be delayed in a number of things, but what will happen is I will set a special meeting during our lunch hours to get in here and get our business done. So it's important. I start at 9 o'clock. That's on the schedule. Because we're going to get real busy real fast. But anyways, Matt, would you give us an overview of House Concurrent Resolution 5003?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. So HCR 5003 would amend the Bill of Rights of the Constitution of the State of Kansas by adding a new section to the Bill of Rights regarding the regulation of abortion. The new section would state that nothing in the state constitution requires the government to fund abortion, and nothing creates or secures a right to abortion. The new section would also provide that the people of Kansas, through their elected state legislators, may pass laws regarding abortion, and such laws would remain subject to the U.S. Constitution's protections of an individual's right to abortion. Procedurally, as with all other concurrent resolutions proposing amendments to the Constitution, the resolution must be adopted by a 2/3 vote in each chamber in order to be presented to the electorate for approval. If HCR 5003 is adopted by that majority in both chambers, the resolution would call for a special election to be held in conjunction with the primary election on August 2nd, 2022, pursuant to Article 14, Section 1 of the Kansas Constitution. And I'd be happy to try to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions for the reviser? Online? Any questions? Seeing no questions online? Then thank you. Thank you, Matt. Committee, as to House Concurrent Resolution 5003, what is the pleasure of the committee? Representative Penn.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we pass this bill favorably out of the committee.
Thank you. I have a motion to pass out favorably. Is there a second? Representative Potter is second. Thank you. Discussion. Yes, Representative Heiberger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have an amendment.
Would you?
And I have some paper copies here if anybody would like those.
You do have paper copies?
I have about a dozen, yeah.
Okay. Want to get those out? I have my vice chair. Representative Wagner, go ahead if you don't mind. You're close. While he's handing them out, would you explain your amendment?
Yes, Mr. Chair. At our hearing, we heard that the intent of this constitutional amendment was just to roll the clock back to where our constitutional law was regarding abortion prior to the Hodie's decision. And we also heard from Ms. Kirk that the likelihood of the Roe v. Wade decision being overturned on the federal level were extremely small. What this amendment would do was be to, if you look on line 24, page 1 of the bill, it says that we're going back to, even if the amendment passes, then to the extent permitted by the Constitution of the United States, the legislature can legislate. So this adds a sentence after, to the extent permitted by the Constitution of the United States. It says, as interpreted by the United States Supreme Court in decisions issued by such court on or before January 16, 2020. So the effect of this would be to roll back our law to where it was before the Hodie's decision, meaning that restriction on abortion would have to meet an undue burden standard. So if what your intent is to roll back the Hodie's decision and to keep that enshrined in our constitutional law, I think you would have no trouble voting for this. If your intent, though, is to completely ban abortion or severely restrict abortion in Kansas, at some point you should vote against it. So what this would do is keep us at the undue burden standard in the effect that was Roe v. Wade was overturned or severe abortion restrictions were passed by allowed by the United States Supreme Court. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Is there a second to the amendment? Representative Lewis Reese will second. Discussion on the amendment or questions of the carrier of the amendment? Appears to be no questions. You may close on your amendment.
I close and move by amendment, Chairman.
Thank you. Motion has been made to amend. It's been seconded. Discussion. And he has closed on his amendment. All in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no? No. Appears to the chair that the noes have it. The noes have it. The noes do have it. The amendment fails. Back on the bill. Further amendments. Discussion. Representative Woodard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just threw off part of the microphone. I'll fix that after this. I have an amendment.
Did you happen to bring copies of the amendment?
Just got the latest version right before here, so I apologize. I did not get paper copies printed out, but I'd be happy to explain it.
Very well. You may explain your amendment. And Matt, if you could put it up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What my amendment would do, as I discussed during the hearing, this would strike the language of when the initiative would appear on the ballot by striking lines 21, 22, and 23, as well as starting at a special election on line 20, and would just change this to the general election in the year of 2022.
Thank you. Matt, can you put the amendment up on screen?
Yes, Mr. Chair, one moment and I'll have it up.
Thank you. And folks, for the future, you're not required, but if you're going to offer an amendment, I think Matt will tell you that if you could make enough copies for the entire committee, that's the way we used to, and for Connie, that's the way we used to do it, and it's new now, and we need to put those in our minutes. And so if you could get additional copies, if you need some help getting copies, come by my office. We have a new copier. Connie's looking at me now like I'm going to make copies for everybody. I need all for the whole committee. 23. Probably be better to make an even number, 20.
Mr. Chairman, I hope you can see the amendment. Sorry, I'm experiencing a few technical difficulties, but I'm going to email both amendments that have been offered as well to the committee. And yeah, as the chairman explained, I'm trying to do my best to facilitate the viewing of these amendments as they're offered.
Thank you for that. Folks, you'll be getting it in your email. You can probably look at it now. It will be from the advisor's office.
But as Representative Woodard indicated, it strikes the end of the language in the resolution for the special election and just sets it for the general election of 2022.
Thank you. The changes are moving it from the primary to the general election. Would that be correct?
Correct.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Is there a second for this amendment? Representative Reese will second the amendment. Discussion?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Woodard, you're striking 3 lines for sure, and I'm just curious, is there a reason why we're striking pursuant to section 1 of article, I mean, why is all that struck? And so, yeah, that's kind of my question.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. I'm not a lawyer, but my interpretation is that Article 14 of the Constitution states that constitutional amendments must appear either on a general election or a special election called by the legislature. My preference is that if we're going to do something as big as rewrite the Constitution that we all swore to uphold, it should take place when the majority of Kansans voters participate, not a partisan primary.
Thank you. Representative Hoyt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to speak favorably of this amendment. All our elections are local, and putting it on a primary requires that our elections offices create ballots so as not to disenfranchise the unaffiliated voters. And I believe this amendment would help to avoid inefficiencies and wasteful spending.
Thank you. Further questions of the carrier of the amendment? Seeing none, Representative Woodard, would you close?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I close and move my amendment.
Thank you. You have heard the representative to amend. All in favor of the amendment say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. No. Opinion of the chair, the nays have it. Representative, you may have your record as a no, correct? Or a yes? Yes? Thank you. Just want to make sure I could hear you. Representative Woodard, I like that. A thumbs up means it's a yes. Anyone else that would like to have their... Representative Clayton is a yes on the amendment. Representative Miller gets 1 vote, not 2. So 1 thumb will be sufficient. Representative Reese will be a yes. Representative Hoyt will be a yes. Representative Henderson will be a yes. Okay, thank you. We are back on the bill. Representative Carpenter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the other day we heard testimony on this bill, and this is just discussion, I don't have an amendment. So, and it was asked of the individuals testifying, you know, how many lawsuits are currently here in the state of Kansas? And I believe the answer was 2. And so they were saying, well, what about all the other pro-life pieces of legislation? Why aren't those in court right now? Well, I think that we can all understand that this is being looked at underneath a microscope since that court decision has been rendered. And Planned Parenthood is not dumb enough, and nor is the opposite party, to try to bring litigation while we are currently looking at it and attempting to pass a constitutional amendment. But if this amendment does not pass, let's look to other states and what has happened there. In some of our testimony that we got, there's states that are like Kansas that ended up in this situation, where in their state constitutions, there was an individual, independent right to an abortion in their constitutions. If we look to Alaska, they have invalidated funding restrictions, parental consent, parental notification. California has invalidated funding restrictions and parental consent. Florida has struck down parental notice and parental consent. Iowa has struck down 72-hour waiting periods. Massachusetts, invalidating funding restrictions and parental consent. Minnesota, New Jersey, Tennessee, it continues to go on. If we do not pass this, we will see our very same similar statutes to parental consent, 72-hour waiting periods, and everything else that we currently have on the books struck down. It is only a matter of time before the courts do so. Planned Parenthood is biding their time. They are not going to more or less give us political ammunition in order to pass this. And so they are hoping that we fail so that a year or two from now, they can begin all of their litigation and lawsuits. And so that is why this is so important. In order to keep our pro-life legislation in place, this is something that needs to pass. It'll allow us to save 15 babies a day, and it absolutely needs to get done. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Carpenter. Representative Clayton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe that, I know how to count, and I think that this is definitely going to pass out of committee. One thing that I do want to bring up to all of you is that to the previous speaker, his mentions of the parental consent law that we currently have on the books, I would ask that in the event that this bill does pass, that we start looking at rewriting our current parental consent law because it is very stringent. It currently has it so that both parents have to consent or one parent and a judge. So let's say that, a father raped his daughter and she became pregnant from the result of that rape. He might not want to consent to that abortion, but her mother might. So we think about things like that. I just ask that as we move forward, we think about victims of rape and incest and really look at maybe loosening our parental consent and just having it so that it's one parent. Because I think that if the objective truly is to protect women, then our current parental consent laws do not do that. So let's just think about that. I do thank the committee for indulging me.
Thank you, Representative. Further discussion on the bill? Yes, Representative Rees.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As we look at what this bill is asking for is to deny the woman her right to choose, to go back to the original statutes of the state of Kansas before even Roe versus Wade. What I see around here and what I am anticipating that this bill will pass, or the resolution will pass, just based on mathematics. Also, when I hear the state or the state Senate president talking about depriving people of their civil liberties by not requiring them to wear masks in chambers or committees, when we see the death toll, the United States surpassing 400,000, state of Kansas is on the rise, and people not respecting other people's space, I think this is very hypocritical, and I'll be voting against the resolution. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir. Yes, Representative Heiberger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I'm a little surprised. I would think that my conservative colleagues on this body would like the Hodes decision because it found that we all have a right to bodily autonomy, and if the government wants to infringe on that autonomy, any attempt it does to do that has to be met by a strict scrutiny standard. Instead, what we have is an attempt to take away that right for women so that the government, and that when I said the government, that's everybody, one of us on this committee, you are the government, so that the government can force women to have children that they don't want to have. And that doesn't sound like limited government to me. You know, I understand that the rationale for this is to be pro-life and to save unborn children, but to me that, with all due respect to my colleagues here, if you can sit in this chamber without taking a simple precaution to protect the life and health of your fellow people in this building, the pro-life argument sounds a little weak to me, to be honest. You know, and we're talking about if this intent of this is to save babies. We heard from one of our members that 15 babies a day are being killed. Well, if that's the case, why isn't this on the August ballot this year instead of the August 22 ballot? By my calculation, That's around 5,000 babies that you're not saving. So it says to me that this isn't about being pro-life. This isn't about saving babies. This is a political stunt. And the intent of this amendment is to provide to aid conservative candidates in the 2022 Republican legislative primaries. You know, I was reading last night, and I didn't intend to read anything about abortion after I stopped working, but I came across it in another book about Romania in the 1980s, under the Ceausescus, before the wall came down. And the birth rate there was falling. So their solution to that was to ban abortion, which is very unusual for a communist country, and to require all Romanian women to have 5 children. And so and the result was that women went back to, well, did they succeed in eliminating abortion? The answer is no. Women went back to dying from botched abortions, and their orphanages filled up with unwanted children. So, and if abortion can't be eliminated in a communist police state, how in the world do you think we're going to eliminate it here? I mean, what I'd really love to see in this committee is a rational discussion about the circumstances that cause women to have abortions and what we can do together to change those circumstances. I think we can take some simple measures like ensuring universal contraception, providing universal health care, raising the wages of working people that by themselves would prevent more abortions than all the anti-abortion legislation that this body has passed in its history. And so for those reasons and more, I'll be voting no, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Representative Arnberger.
Thank you, Madam Chair, or Mr. Chair. I have been doing a lot of reading on Value Them Both, and I spent my last weekend reading through all the testimony, and my heart is just broken because the fact that this is such a big issue. We are about to lose, if this doesn't pass, Kansas is at the ability that we could be losing all 23 of our current, I'm going to call them protections, others are going to call them restrictions, abortion protections we have right now. When I asked Planned Parenthood what current restrictions they support, they don't support any of them. And I have to agree with Representative Carpenter that this is just the first step. And so with that, 15 babies a day, 15 lives a day, Kansas has been saving since 1999. Those are lives. No matter what you want to say, those are lives. And I am just heartbroken that we don't consider these lives. So with that, I strongly support this amendment, and I ask that you also support it with me and allow your constituents to vote. Allow them the ability to vote on this issue. If they don't want it, then let them vote no. But allow your constituents to vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Penn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm a little new to the zoo, if I may. So I don't know everyone and everything and all their passions that come to this, but I hear a lot of conflation of issues on this very simple amendment, which is to give our constituents the right to vote on how they choose to be governed here in Kansas. That is the premise and the foundation of our representative democracy, the consent of the governed. I get it that you don't want to consent to allow children to be born and have a voice. But what I find appalling is that I stood here last week and asked Planned Parenthood for some simple metrics on how many black babies are killed under abortion. Now, this amendment is not getting rid of abortion, so that's a false accusation that you're making. It's very simple. It's in front of you in black and white. But I did a little research, and the CDC and Guttmacher reported that there were 3,591 HIV deaths in the black community, 4,861,000 drug-induced deaths, 7,903 homicides, 13,435 diabetes deaths, 14,135 accidental deaths, 69,090 deaths from cancer, 73,095 heart disease deaths, and that totaled in the ballpark of 246,142 deaths in the black community total. And all of those 15 leading causes of death in the black community, for those of our colleagues who would say that Black Lives Matter, pales in comparison to the #1 leading cause of death in the black community for those black lives that you say you honor. 259,336 deaths by abortion in 1 year alone. It is safer for someone to be born and outside of the womb than inside of the womb in New York. We know that because we see the stats, 122,000 that are aborted. I don't understand how you can sit here, and deny people the right to vote on how they choose to be governed. And with that, I yield. I would love to have an explanation of that.
Thank you. Further discussion? Seeing none. Yes, Representative Heiberger.
May I briefly respond to the?
You may, sir.
I guess one reason I oppose a vote on this issue is that I don't think civil rights should be subject to a vote. And I think that's something that, I don't think the rights of any individual in this body to vote should be subject to right to vote by the majority. So, thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further discussion, Representative Penn, you may close on your motion to pass out House Concurrent Resolution 5003.
Sir, I close on the motion to move us out favorably with the House Concurrent 5003. Thank you.
Thank you. All in favor of passing out House 003 favorably, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. No. Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. Representative Heiberger? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
I have my vote recorded, please.
Yes, you may. The ayes have it. The ayes do have it. It is passed. We're going to go around the room. A thumbs up will be you're favorable. If you're a thumbs down, you are against it. I'll start with Representative Heiberger. It's a no. Representative Reisman, do you wish to be recorded? No. Representative Henderson is a no. Representative Hauser is a yes. Representative Arnberger is a yes. Representative Penn is a yes. You only get one. Representative Smith is a yes. Representative Hoyt is a no. Representative Reese is a no. Representative Epley is a yes. Representative Burris is a yes. Representative Carpenter is a yes. Representative Clayton is a no. Representative Potter is a yes. Representative Howe is a yes. Representative Garber is a yes. Representative Woodard is a no. Representative Wagner is a yes. Representative Mosier is a yes. Representative Arnkamp is a yes. You're a yes too. You got the sun shining in on you. Okay. I think that's all recorded votes. Representative Reisman is a yes. Did I miss anyone? Seeing none, the minutes will reflect that. Committee, let's move on. I'm sending out an agenda today which says call of the chair next week, and nothing's on it. It will change. We're going to have a number of bills that were introduced last week. The reviser has them. Correct, Matt? Do you have those bills so I can turn in today? Matt? Are you still there, Matt?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I believe I have a couple bills that will be sent up to you.
Okay. We will get those introduced and read in today. So the agenda will change. I anticipate probably hearing as many bills that we can possibly do. But with that, tomorrow's meeting we will not have. I understand we're going on the floor at 8:30 or 9 o'clock. That's what leadership has indicated to me. So because of that, we will not have a meeting. But just watch for the changes in the agenda. I want to thank you all for appearing here today. It makes it much easier when you're present. Now, in future bills, if you have an amendment, I would like to have a copy, a paper copy of an amendment. It's not always possible, so would Connie, because Connie will put those in our, and if you need help getting copies, come by our office. We'll try to assist you in that area. But you know, as we go further into the session, we're going to hear a number of bills that will probably have a number of amendments. So if you could have those available, Matt's going to put them on the screen, but it's just, you know, I like to have the paper copy in my hand where I can write on it. But it's up to you. Younger generations don't have that problem that I have. They're accustomed to looking at screens. But with that, anything else for the good of the committee? Seeing none, we are adjourned.